Uh, Hello and welcome to this wonderful new episode of the Values Bookshop. This series is called The Other Side Of. So, the other side of a cinematographer is what I am doing this episode, and I'm glad to have with me Sandeep Kriplani, who is a very recent friend. Welcome to the show, Sandeep.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sandeep, can you tell us what does a cinematographer do in a movie or in a film?
So cinematographer's job is basically everything which is related to creating a frame in the sense the lighting and the framing. Also, if to put it in better words, the cinematographer is probably the vision, uh, the guy who sort of gets the vision which is on paper on screen. So matlab, he's the one or she's the one who will sort of decide on how the frame should look, how the lighting should be, and in working with the production designer, decide on how the frame needs to look, everything like that. So that's
Okay,
primarily their job. Plus their inputs on the colors, the color scheme, the grade later on, everything.
okay. So, how important is it to understand the story as an individual as well as understand the director's interpretation of a story? If you are the one who's going to derive what the frame is, obviously it is part of a story.
Right.
Whether it is a short format or a long format is a different thing.
Right.
But within both of them, this is a common necessity. So how do you study the story? Is it your own version? Is it the version of the director? Are you briefed by them earlier? How does it work?
So usually my working process is pretty much what I do is I definitely first, being narrated is one of the best ways to actually think of what the script exactly is. So when the director gives you the first narration and you sort of listen to it and you sort of listen to what exactly or how exactly they've thought or interpreted the script. And then when you yourself read it as a cinematographer, you sort of come up with more ideas and you visualize it in a certain way. You probably start creating one of those बोलते ना हम एक विजुअल्स एक अपने दिमाग में एक अपना वर्ल्ड बना लेते हैं कि ओके ठीक है दिस इज हाउ आई प्लान द फिल्म टू लुक लाइक एंड दिस इज हाउ आई प्रोबेबली सी दिस पर्टिकुलर सीक्वेंस टू बी लाइक और सी that sequence to be like. So that's how at least that's how I work. But I think every DOP has a very different approach to how they look at films, or even if it is a small ad film, or if it is a long format film, the work process and like the process is different with different people. It's how, but usually this is what I do, and that's how I go about it.
Okay. Uh, is there a chance that your interpretation might differ from the director's? And when it happens, how do you particularly resolve it? If you could share an example where this happened and what happened, it will make our viewers understand the process a little more.
So, in most cases, yes, you may come up with like a sort of a creative difference that we call कि अच्छा the director thinks of it कि अच्छा ये तरीके से करना है, but you want it to be a certain way because you think that this will be the right way to go about it. So they say one to give you one example, I had worked on this film for a fashion brand, and the whole idea was to make it look very jazzy and funky and what every other fashion brand does. and what every other न्यू एज फैशन ब्रांड विल डू, वो उनको सेम, like using a reference and creating your frames is what they wanted to do. And as a DOP, you always some, like there are some projects you feel like, yeah, acha, chalo, like let's try something that probably can be different from what people are doing, or probably if not different, then at least you know let's experiment with something, like like we as filmmakers, I think, shouldn't stop experimenting.
Okay.
And मतलब जब वो एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन की बात आती है, देन द प्रोड्यूसर विल बी लाइक, अरे इतना बजट नहीं है, ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है. सो देर आर
True.
टू मेनी लेयर्स टू फाइट. बट like I feel the creative difference can only be solved if you are open to the idea of experimenting. Like, so if, like, it's all about sitting together and actually coming to a common point or a common ground, which you both, as matlab, as a director and as a DOP, think that, okay, this works, like this is something that will work. So
So what
so
happened
that
in that episode?
uh, so so basically, the director wanted something which was very common, and I wanted to try something where it did not. It was it was like very simplistic in its approach. Like, it didn't have too much treatment. It was just one frame, and the entire film happens in that one frame. So eventually we did listen to the director, but we did take the other thing as an option कि ठीक है, चलो ब्रांड को दिखाएंगे, अगर ये पसंद आया तो ये भी यूज कर लेंगे. But
Okay.
it's just that, मतलब I feel when it was a film like that, fashion films give you more leverage to sort of try and experiment with your treatment, and like, because they are not very story oriented, or they are not very they like their message is not to convey a story, but to show their brand in the most stylized way possible. So probably my opinion was not right for that particular film, but maybe like it would have worked for something else. So that's what happened then.
Uh, I'm glad you gave an example where you didn't win, and
Yeah.
it
most
is
most
not.
most cases most cases, I think, like, you sort of don't win, but you always come to a common ground. Like I said, like you always have to, because you have to keep working with the same people, and you want you want to be as kind as possible in that process, and not
Yeah.
create that environment where you aren't able to work with that person again. So might as well just, like ego is a big thing. I feel ego is something that probably it's best to keep aside when it comes to a professional environment.
Okay. So in personal environment, you're okay with having an ego, is it?
Not really, but I'm not that kind of a person. But it's okay. Like, if someone has an ego, like, to a limit, everything is good. Not, uh,
Yeah.
not beyond that.
Okay. Uh, it's a very volatile field.
Yeah,
There are days one goes without work. I've worked in the business for a long time. Been part of it from inside, been part of it from outside, as an agency, as a writer, as a production house myself.
right.
Uh, there are days when you're really frustrated. You may have the best of ideas in the world, but you don't have even the most pathetic jobs don't come to you.
Right,
Like you
right,
think कि ये तो क्या है, मतलब ये तो मैं आंख बंद कर भी कर लेता हूँ, but वो आता नहीं है.
right,
And
right,
nobody trusts you, or nobody trusts your vision or your ability to deliver, or for
right,
some reason they just things don't fall in place. How do you
right.
deal with the pitfalls of such a business? You specifically, I don't want you to
Yeah. So,
philosophize, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, so I'll, so to be honest, I think the dull days that we call it, like the days when we've like I have had too many dull days in my process of being. In fact, you can say I am having some of my dull days right now as well. But it's these are the days which probably you can use to think more. Like, I always spend time watching films or watching shows. Like, my greatest inspirations of cinema have, like, uh, I have seen in the last few months. In fact, like, there are films that I have watched, there are shows that I have binged, like, absolutely. Like, there are some shows like Ted Lasso which I just binged through and through. So what I like about the simplistic cinema or the simplistic shows is that it helps me think during these days. Like, if I ever got this opportunity, or if I ever did something like this, how would I do it? Or more than how would I do it? Like, then I start working on concepts or ideas which I think, okay, if someone someday approaches me for something like this, then this is what kind of treatment I can suggest. Like, if someone is ready to experiment. And other than that, I always think that, you have to keep yourself updated with the new equipment and some stuff like that. So I will, अगर मेरे पास काम नहीं है तो मैं अपने लाइटमैन्स, अपने गैफर्स को परेशान करूंगा, बोलूंगा कि अच्छा, मेरे को जब गोडाउन में बैठे हो तो बस लाइट दिखा दो, ये दिखा दो, वो दिखा दो, just to keep myself uh, updated with what kind of technology is out there, and, like, try to make it, like, try to make these dull days sort of more useful rather than calling them the dull days. So I try to keep myself busy, in the sense, not by involving myself with unnecessary things, but things that sort of can help my craft move forward. Like, I can work on it much better. And then there are days when you feel completely burnt out trying to find work, and, you're calling 10 people saying कि कुछ experiment करते हैं, ये करते हैं. You call your director friend, short film बनाते हैं, ऐसा करते हैं. Once you're tired with that, then you pick up a hobby or something like that and just be away from it, just so that you have that downtime as well.
Uh, how do you how do you ensure that this glamour field doesn't overwhelm you? Because I've been part of it, like I said,
Right,
and
right,
it,
right.
it drains you out sometimes. It is just too happening too fast when you are in the
Yeah,
middle of it all. Uh,
yeah,
it's like really you cannot get off the train. You don't want to. Sometimes you can't get out of it. And
mm,
it's too many things, too many late nights, too many uh, early mornings as well. Sometimes we are
yeah,
shooting to catch the magic light and all kinds of things
yeah,
happening. Uh, and you are mentally, physically, emotionally drained, but because the project is such, or the projects are such, one
right.
after another, that you are forced to be professional about it. How do you deal with that kind of pressure?
Mm, so whenever I've had those kinds of, like, scenarios where I'm constantly working, back to back working, I think my exit from all this is more like, I probably just pick my car up and go driving. I take a break. It's hard sometimes to sort of do this day in and out, because like, when you are in the creative field, you are expected to be at the top of your game at every given point of time. Matlab, you, like, even one small, I wouldn't say error, but something that, one small portion of mediocre work or something like that you do, you are looked down upon. Suddenly, like, there are like 10 people giving you criticism and feedback, just because this one project you did not do right, or maybe it didn't go the way your projects usually go. So your the expectation to sort of be at the top of your game can really drain you out. That is what drains me out on most days. Ki, as a creative, you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to uh, एक तो experiment भी नहीं करो, mistakes भी नहीं करो, and you have to be on the top of your game. Plus, you have to socialize with 100 people just so that you are known in that side of people. And so my way is just to sort of be away from everyone for some time, like, go back to my old college friends who have nothing to do with this industry, who will not talk work when I'm sitting with them, and like, just take my downtime with a different set of people altogether. And then you definitely, once you're home, you have, if you have family, if you're lucky to have family, then you sort of, like, take some downtime with them. Baki, there are no other ways to sort of exit it. I don't
Okay.
think there is anything you can do.
Are you afraid that you will lose your creative touch sometime, or are you afraid that you may not get work, or you may not get recognition, or do those times occur? Uh, do they have a pattern? How do you view them?
Definitely, like, I think we as a generation, I would say, not just as from the creative field, we as a generation are probably one of the most insecure bunch of people who, like, face like, I think we face insecurity almost every day. Like, matlab, there are so many days where you are just thinking कि यार कल काम आएगा नहीं आएगा, how, where the next paycheck is coming from, and these questions always come. But I think the best way to deal with them is take it one day at a time. Like I know it can get overwhelming at times, and you can always vent it out, speak to your friends, or maybe go for therapy. This insecurity, this anxiety can always el- it can be overcome. It's just that you need to have the willpower for it. Like, you really need to sit and um, like, you need to deal with it one day at a time. You cannot, not all answers you may get at one go, but
Yeah,
धीरे धीरे आएगा, धीरे धीरे सब आएगा.
बहुत बहुत मस्त आंसर था ये. Very real, very practical. Uh, इसका flip side, which is the positive side, what is it that convinces you that you will always do a good job? What if I come to you? What is it that you are sure of that makes
Yeah.
you convinced that you are going to do a good job?
So I think um, creativity is very subjective. Like, firstly,
Yeah.
probably what you find something to be very good, maybe not of the same opinion with me. But
Okay.
उसमें उसमें the beauty of it is that, like, we are a, मतलब, I don't have the right word for it, but हाँ, we are a very हम किसी के साथ भी काम कर सकते हैं. Like, as a creative person, I have realized we work with different set of people almost every day, and we are still managing our work. Like, हम we are not stuck with कि अरे हमको इसके साथ ही काम करना है, या हमें ऐसे, मतलब, we can't work with someone else. So there is always work out there. You will always be, मतलब, chosen by someone. If not this person, then someone else for sure. Like, there is uh, I think your creativity can will be liked by someone or the other. Like, you cannot just think कि okay, 10 लोग मेरे को ना बोल रहे तो 11वां इंसान ना नहीं बोलेगा, शायद हाँ बोल दे. So it's just that how how adaptive you are. Like, मतलब, the whole idea is कि how you can accept the other person as well. Like, तुम काम जब करते हो, I think the collaborative effort is what I think will keep everyone at work. मतलब, I don't think any, सबका जो डल पीरियड है, बट जब काम आता है तो फिर it comes rolling back to back, and I I don't think it can ever stop. Like, your creativity will be appreciated by someone or the other at every given point of time.
Okay.
So.
How come you don't have an ego about your creative self? And this is a genuine question
Uh,
because we work very hard to have a point of view.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, one of our common friends, Vineet, and I have had like
Right.
innumerable discussions on this, whether having a point of view is good for a creative or not. But I'm just
Right.
asking you, if we have a
Mm.
point of view, it just shows that we are clear about things. How come you are not susceptible to it, or am I reading you wrong?
No, you're reading me right for sure. It's not about not having an ego. So the thing is that I may not be open about having that ego. Like, I may not be about open about having a stern point of view. Like, there are people who can keep their point of view very sternly, but
Yeah,
that's not in me, because I believe in the idea of listening to others first and then praising my point of view. Like that
okay.
that's at least the school of thought that I have come from, and that's the kind. It also depends on, like, the kind of people you've worked with and the kind of upbringing you've had. Like, मैं जब school में था, like, I was a very below average kid, low on confidence, पढ़ाई नहीं कर पाता था, and that sort of जब जब किसी इंसान के पास बोलते ना एकेडमिक्स या प्रोफेशन नहीं होता दिखाने के लिए, तो द गाय कैन शो काइंडनेस, एंड दैट्स माय वे ऑफ शोइंग काइंडनेस कि ओके चलो मैं आपका ओपिनियन पहले सुन लेता हूँ, and then I'll place my opinion, and then whatever you choose is, then we'll go with it. Like, that's how I
Okay.
function. So at least I
That's a
believe
very
that.
beautiful way to look at it. Um, do you also dream of being a director at some point? Because irrespective of the fact that you said the school of thought you come from, your own laws which have contributed to your personality as you are
Right.
right now. But that
Right.
does not take away from the fact that every creative project that one does, and sometimes one odd idea that you have cracked works very well, even if
Right.
the world may not know. Like you
Right.
just decided that you would do this, and at the last moment, the shot or the scene got a flip and went ahead or became better. Everybody's
Got
been
it.
talking about it. They may not talk about you, but you know, okay, you cracked it. So that gives
Mhm.
you confidence.
Right.
Do you want to tell your own stories? If yes, why and what kind of stories?
Uh, so when it comes to my own stories, I know for a fact that I can visualize my stories better than the directors I work with. Like, if I have a certain story in my head, I can definitely visualize it better than them, because that's what I have trained my mind to do. Like, that's what I do, as that's my profession, and I can always think of better frames, better ways to light it, and think of better ways of executing it. But when it comes to performances, like, so when it comes to a director's job, like, it's not just the visual storytelling that has to come out. It's a lot of other things, like, um,
The
like,
graph,
there is performances, then मतलब वो story को किस तरह, you have to extract the best out of it. Then every story has a text, a subtext, and there are so many things to it. um as a director, I don't think, at least as a director, I will be able to ever come to that point. For now, at least in my current stage of life, I don't think I'll ever be able to come to that point where I can think of so many things. Like, I can think visually and I can execute it, but yeah, if there is a director who believes in my story, and if I write something, or if I think of some story which really I believe in truly, and if I think this director works best for that, I would rather have a director who can extract the best out of it rather than myself doing it, because um, I don't think I'll do enough justice to it, to be very honest.
okay, that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
Uh, how much do you think a cinematographer should have grasp over the technicalities of lighting, equipment, and how much of it is natural talent?
Um, so mm, I'll go back in time a little when you see these old films, right? Like uh, films which are made in the 70s and the 80s, like in fact even further. Uh, if you see, they were technically very challenging films to do because they were very limited to equipment and they were very limited to what they had to shoot the craft. Like, and
Yeah,
uh, मेरे हिसाब से I think I was lucky to be a part of the digital world because when you see these old cameras and when you see the old technology, it was so much knowledge you had to have about the technical aspects कि वो नॉलेज के बिना आप शायद कभी काम कर ही नहीं पाते and nowadays I think a lot of it is logic, like when it comes to lighting a scene. You think of a source light, अगर window है तो एक source light बना लो, और like it's all about logic. How you usually see what's happening in the real world is what you want to experiment with and execute it in your films. And then you enhance it with your taste and with your thinking, with your creativity कि उसको और कैसे better करना है या कुछ करना है. So I feel technicalities are very important, no doubt, because in a professional environment, you want to make sure that you're giving the best results because you are being firstly paid for it and you're hired for a certain thing. So your job is to give the best results. But I think at the same time, you should be open to the idea of being very what do you say, experimental with your work, in the sense कि तुम कुछ हर बार नया ट्राई करोगे तो शायद something nicer will come out. So it is important, yes, but it is much easier to learn the craft now. I feel it is much it's lesser effort, in the sense कि तुम्हें physical effort कम होगा क्योंकि you just put a light and program it according to what you want it for, and the light is giving you that. So as long as you do it the right way, there is no, I don't think there's too much effort in it anymore.
okay. One last question.
Yeah.
What is the most interesting part of your job, and what keeps you going on?
So I think one of the best things about my job is that I see something new every day. Like um, you walk on set, the set is a completely blank. Like तुम्हारे पास एक, मान के चलो एक रूम है जिसे जिसे आपको लाइट करना है, एंड बिफोर यू प्लेस द लाइट इट्स completely blank. There is nothing on it. You Most people can't visualize it, कि ये कैसे दिखेगा लाइट होने के बाद. And you have that superpower, like at least as a DOP you have that superpower कि okay, you can visualize it, कि how you know the frame will look or the room will look once you put your lights on it. So so the thrill of knowing that, when you know that you have that superpower and you are the only one on that set who can think it in that perspective, it really keeps you driving it. It motivates you almost to n number of levels कि यार चलो एटलीस्ट ये चीज जो है वो मेरे से कोई नहीं ले सकता. ये
That,
मेरे, इट्स वेरी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड टू मी. ये कोई, मतलब if I fall sick today and if I have a heart attack and die on set right now, उस दिन के लिए मेरे को कोई रिप्लेस नहीं कर पाएगा वो सेट पे, इज व्हाट माय पर्सपेक्टिव इज. सो I feel that is one very big motivating factor for me ki, very few people are able to do something what I do, and when I do it, I have been like, someone has called me because they trust me that I will deliver that. So knowing that someone is out there trusting you with your ability and your capabilities, it's just a very motivating factor, I think.
So beautiful. Uh, Before I end, I used to think as writers we are gods because we decide what the story is. Everybody else will come in and do whatever they want to do with
Right,
it.
right,
But
right.
we have the power to decide what is going to be said, and
Yeah,
that kept me motivated for the longest time. You go back and you keep on saying, okay, this is how I perceive it.
right.
Whether it gets okayed or not also wasn't the point. It is that before the discussion happens, then you call it good or bad. There's nothing unless I give you to play with.
Yeah, right,
And I
right.
completely resonate with a lot of things you said. Uh, it's one of the nicest, vulnerable uh, interviews I've had, and you've been so open about it. I'm so thankful to you for sharing your
Thank you, sir.
journey,
Thank you.
your experiences. It's been very beautiful. Thank
It's
you
been
so
an
much, and
honor.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bye.